the voice of the studio as well. And by popular demand, and I mean popular demand, this is another Manic Monday after host free edition of Sports Talk. So after we say what we're going to say here in the opening moments of the program, we're going to turn it over to you and let you take it away with your comments, your questions. If you have a question for us, or if you direct something to us, then we will respond in kind. Otherwise, you know what? We had such fun with that last week. We'll do it again this week and see how much we enjoy it. Phone number is 888-898-2525. That is the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number into Sports Talk. And you got four dudes here who were at four different games on Saturday. You don't find that anywhere else in Sports Talk radio in this state. I was at South Carolina. Pat was at Clemson. Of course, Bergie was at Coastal Carolina. And, of course, Ernest was in Atlanta with South Carolina State. So we got folks with eyes on what happened over the weekend. And I'll kick it off by saying, South Carolina Furman, bit of a struggle early, or maybe you should credit Furman for coming in with an excellent game plan early on, striking the Gamecocks very quickly. But then eventually the talent and the depth for South Carolina won out. And, of course, Spencer Rattler. What can you say about Spencer Rattler? The numbers he is putting up now are like video game type numbers. And we'll go over the last two performances at Williams-Brice Stadium. Think back to what he did against Tennessee and now what he did against Furman. He is just in that zone that few quarterbacks can get into and stay. And, of course, Xavier Legette has been fantastic. Marion Brown came on and was big for them on Saturday until he got hurt a little bit, but they expect him at this point to play against Georgia. Offensive line may be a little bit better. Defense was, after being shell-shocked early, kind of settled in and took over. They've got some injury situations there, of course, that they're trying to work through. Special teams was not good. When's the last time we said that about the Gamecocks, right? They had some mishaps in special teams that I'm sure Pete Limbo was not happy with. So the Gamecocks get a win over a good Furman team, which I think will win a lot of games in the Southern Conference and make the FCS playoffs. A good, solid win. And, Pat, you watched the Tigers take on Charleston Southern. And, when the Bucks went up 14-7, I could just imagine what the mood was inside Death Valley when that score went up on the scoreboard after the turnover and the pick six. And all of a sudden, down 14-7. And I got to believe, Gamecock fans were chuckling in their beer. Of course, Clemson fans were probably chuckling in their beer when it happened to South Carolina. But there had to be a surreal moment. Interesting that Dabo Swinney would not let the score travel over into the second quarter with his team behind. He called that timeout late in the first quarter so they could tie it up and go into the second quarter tied at 14-14. But, and then, of course,
Clemson, he claims that's not the reason he did that, though, Phil.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it was, but he claims that's not the reason.
Yeah.
He wanted to keep their momentum and wanted them to be focused on punching it in the end zone.
Yeah, and he claimed Kyle Parker was as good as, 25 NFL quarterbacks. He makes a lot of claims.
I mean, even the Clemson radio guys made that point about, Dabo probably doesn't want us to be behind going into the second quarter and that score get out nationally.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt that's why he did that.
Absolutely. But, Pat, the Tigers turned things back around, dominated, and won as they should have. But there were some anxious moments there early on and some performance issues of concern coming out of that game.
There were, Phil. You're exactly right. And I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I do think y'all are probably correct with him calling that timeout. I know a lot of other pundits were saying the same thing because he didn't want that to be internet fodder across the country, being down going after one. But this game truly was a tale of two halves. Is the team we saw in the first half, are they the real Clemson Tigers, or is the team we saw in the second half the real Clemson Tigers? But from where I was sitting, up in the press box, the first half, the starters for each team, there was not a whole heck of a lot of difference between the starters for Clemson and the starters of Charleston Southern. And I know that's probably going to upset some Clemson fans out there, and maybe some Carolina fans will like hearing that. But it was a bit startling. I mean, the Tigers came out, looked good on their opening drive. They had that long 10-play, 68-yard drive to open the game. and it looked like things were right. But they did have to have a fourth down conversion on that drive to continue it. They, of course, converted. But then on their second possession, it just really started to get away from them quickly. The Tigers went for it again on fourth, this time from their own 29-yard line, which I'm struggling to understand the thought process there. I guess you're just trying to set expectations and go ahead and get there, but it just didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me that you'd go for it on your own 29-yard line, and that was where we started seeing some of the same issues from the Duke game crop back up. There was an awkward exchange between the center and the quarterback, led to a Klubnik fumble. Charleston Southern recovered it, ran it all the way back to the 1-yard line. You can't really pin that against the Tigers' defense. I mean, the possession started at their own 1-yard line. Mm-hmm. So, of course, Charleston Southern punched it in. They then went for an onside kick. They recovered it. Clemson players, a lot of them, when that kickoff happened, they were looking at each other. They were looking at the sideline. It almost looked like they were not even ready for the kickoff and just kind of were flat-footed. Charleston Southern recovered, but the Tigers got very lucky. Again, the defense saved the day and forced a 3-and-out. But then when Clemson got the ball back again, Klubnik was leading them down the field, maybe 50, 60-yard drive down the field deep into Charleston Southern territory, but then just a horrific decision by Cade Klubnik. And kudos to him. He owned up to it after the game, but Dabo talked about it. Bo Collins talked about it. A lot of folks mentioned after the game that cannot happen. He has to learn from that. Klubnik faced pressure, and then for some reason, maybe he was trying to throw it out of bounds and didn't quite get it there, but as he was getting hit, he threw off his back foot, and it was just a gift right into the arms of Leon Thomas for Charleston Southern, who ran it back. He could have walked it back if he wanted to for a 67-yard pick six. And then you started hearing a lot of boo birds come out, especially where we were up in where we were in the press box. You're pretty close to the student section.
Clemson fans booing their team?
Never would hear such a thing. But yeah, there were a lot of boo birds coming out there. And then
any bottles being thrown? Any water bottles?
No, nothing.
Didn't go that far.
Nothing like that. This was not Columbia several years ago in that game. Yeah,
I'm just checking.
But then they did respond exactly like you would hope a team to respond. I would think Dabo would be very proud of his guys. They responded with a 7-play, 57-yard drive, a pretty quick drive, about 2 minutes, where they did get that touchdown to tie the game. They then, of course, responded after that with another touchdown to take that 21-14 lead. The teams exchanged field goals, and going into halftime, it was 24-17. Whatever Dabo Swinney said at halftime would have loved to have been a fly on the wall because they came out on fire in the second half. And the offense that I think most fans expected to see last Monday night against Duke, again this past weekend against Charleston Southern, they finally showed up in the second half. And the Tigers scored a touchdown on every single possession in the second half until their final one of the game where they just ran out the clock. But they had 6 straight touchdown drives, 6 straight touchdowns. One of those was actually a pick six by Wade Woodaz. It was very, very nice tip drill, 35-yard pick six. But the point was the offense came to life, but I don't want that to be the main point here. 66-17 was the final score, but that's very misleading. Charleston Southern, I don't have this exact number in front of me, but looking across the sideline, they couldn't have had more than 60 guys on their team if I had to guess. They have a very small roster. Clemson was emptying out everybody they had. Dabo told us after the game, every single offensive lineman that was healthy played. 16 different people caught passes. That's running backs, tight ends, and receivers, but 16 different people caught the ball. So Clemson was really just showing their depth there, whereas Charleston Southern ran out of gas. But again, the biggest takeaway for me of this game, you take the ones for each team, there was not as much separation as you would expect.
Don't say that. Come on.
A lot more needs to be seen from this Tiger squad.
I agree with that. Let's welcome Bergie, who burst in a moment ago unannounced.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Dabo said that was not the
reason.
We know
what he said, but that's not what he meant. Okay, we know what he said. Coaches lie. Coaches lie all the time. They lie about everything.
I agree.
All right, so
just, for the record, I wanted us to be factually accurate.
Well, no, for the record, my opinion is he was trying to save face and not trailing Charleston Southern.
Absolutely,
and having that on the ESPN crawl. I agree with whoever said that. That's not an original take by me. I think I heard that somebody said. It might have been the Clemson Network.
Yeah, Don Munson, they were speculating about that during the timeout, and they said that's probably the reason he didn't want to be trailing going into the second quarter.
They wouldn't dare accuse Sir Sweeney of misleading the public, would they?
not misleading. They were just commenting on what he did.
Yeah.
That was their opinion on what he did. Now, he came back and later claimed, no, that the reason was they wanted to stay focused, needed to punch it in the end zone because they struggled with that at Duke. But yeah,
butt cheeks.
let's all be real. He did not want to be down 14-7 going to the second quarter.
All right, let's go to your game. First career coaching. Hard to believe. Tim Beck's been in this business a long time. He finally got his first W as a head coach.
As a college head coach, he had done some, he coached in high school, but yeah, as a collegiate head coach, finally came to fruition. Had to actually work through a 40-minute weather delay late first quarter. It was ironic, almost like the same scenario we're talking about with Clemson. With about 40 seconds left to go before the first quarter was over, they call all the teams off the field. There's lightning in the area, and so we evacuate the field. Go back up to the press box, wait about a half an hour, get a cookie, something to drink, then go back down and take one snap, and that's the end of the first quarter. So, but otherwise, a good solid win by Coastal Carolina coming off the UCLA loss. They've still got issues in the run game. Really struggling to try and develop a solid running attack, much different than what they looked like running the football under Jamie Chadwell in the past. Different style of offense, clearly, and I think they're still trying to adjust to that, only averaging by just a shade over 2 yards per carry. But when you still have Grayson McCall, you can make plays, and as we found out too, Jared Brown is a pretty good running back as wide receiver. He had a 77-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter that pretty much put it away, after a 48-yard touchdown reception from Grayson McCall, where both times he either carried the ball and ran away from the defense on the sideline or caught the pass and then ran away from the defense. He's got speed, and he's going to be a star at Coastal. But I think defensively, Tim Beck's really excited about what they've been doing thus far. They really shut down Jacksonville State, a team that Phil came into the contest. They've been inside the red zone 7 times in their 2 previous games. Scored 7 rushing touchdowns, and Coastal kept them out of the end zone both times they were in the red zone. They had to settle for field goals. But I will say this about Rich Rodriguez and the job he's done at Jacksonville State. If you watch them play, they love the tempo side of the coin. And part of the reason they're so good at it, as soon as the ball carrier, whomever he is tackled, instead of just, tossing the ball up to the line judge or whatever the case, they run it directly back to the umpire so he can spot it and the center's back on top of the football. That's how you make up and get a few more plays in, because regardless of where they are, they could be on the sidelines, they could be out of bounds, they could be right there in between the hash marks. They're going to find the umpire and hand him the football, so they're right back up on top of it. But Coastal led by 20 going into the fourth quarter, so a backdoor cover or a push. I'm not sure what the final line came in. I know it was right around 2 touchdowns. So Jacksonville State got in there under the number. But for the most part, I think Coastal very pleased with their home opener. Good win for them. And now they get Duquesne this coming Saturday, and still trying to work on the run game, I'm sure, before they open conference play a week from Thursday against Georgia State.
Okay. Takes us now to those Bulldogs. And I'm telling you, Ernest,
have you got me on already?
Schedule makers did the Bulldogs, did Buddy no favors. I mean, they got to get away, whoever is your next head coach there in the future. I mean, I know you got to play these money games, but piling it on one after another for 3 consecutive weeks just kind of beats everybody down. And you go to Georgia Tech, and it's going to be hard for y'all to play with those guys, and that was the case. What do you sense of the morale of the team after these 3 games?
Really good.
And I should say, Jackson State, of course, that was a
game that we felt was winnable. We should have played a little bit better. We just didn't play well in that game. But when you go into a Charlotte, or you go into a Georgia Tech, you really had to come with a different mindset. But let me do Bergie one better. We had a 2.5-hour delay. We supposed to start at 1. We didn't start almost 3:25. And how about this? Let me throw one at you guys as this. Bill Hamilton didn't make the trip this week. So guess who did the game a la Vin Scully?
I hope he had a good excuse.
He did have a good excuse. Yeah, I'll leave that alone. He had a good excuse.
Okay.
He was under the weather, but he'll be back in 2 weeks. So I did the game by myself. Fortunately, I was able to throw it back to the station and not have to fill 2.5 hours before doing 3 hours, as you can hear. So it was a pretty, I think, a really good game for South Carolina State. We continued to improve. I think one of the things I see from a different perspective than you guys is that we're on the other end of these games that you talk about. So we see teams enforce their will. We played Charlotte. We lost 24-3. And this was the game before the Georgia Tech game. But we were actually in that game. We actually led in that ball game 3-0 into the second quarter. Did pretty well, got them off the field in their first two possessions. They inserted Darrell Robinson, and he was a different character. They didn't have anyone like him on their team. They went down and scored. We come back, don't do anything. They come down, Darrell Robinson again. They go down, they score again. Now we're down 14-3. But South Carolina State comes back, leads us down the field. We get down to the 1 yard line. Can't get it. Matter of fact, it was third and two from the 3. We get 2 yards to get a first down. We get 1 yard. Then it's 4th and 1. We can't get a yard, much less get it in the end zone. They're pinned back now. So had we scored then, it would have been 17-10. They punt it from being deep in their own end zone. We drive it back down again. Can't get it in the end zone. Start the second half. I think they scored to go up, 24-3, which was ultimately the final score. And, we move the football. But what happens when you have these games against these larger teams, they eventually impose their will. It wasn't a lot of passes, just eventually you wear people down. What happened with Clemson and Charleston Southern is Dabo knew he could eventually wear this team down. But having been on the end of Charleston Southern at Clemson, and personally, one of the problems that I have with Clemson, I've always felt when they played South Carolina State, there would have been some games where it's been 28-3 or something like that going into the fourth quarter, and they're still slinging it around, throwing it downfield because they're concerned that the end result. And let me tell you, people say there's nothing to that. That's not true. The end result is what they want to see, that they beat a team like they feel they should beat a team. And when Charleston Southern went up on Clemson, as soon as they had an opportunity to run the score up, they did. Last week against Georgia Tech, I thought we played pretty well. We cut the score to 21-6, missed the extra point going into halftime. So now we are figuring, we're only down 14 going into halftime. 34 seconds left to go in the game. They've got the ball on their own 25-yard line, and Jamal Haynes breaks off a 67-yard run from the 25-yard line. So now it's 16 seconds to go. Georgia Tech's looking at 1st and goal going into halftime. So instead of us going into the locker room down 21-6, now we're down 28-6. It was just a matter of will after that. So, I thought our kids played well. I thought our running backs ran extremely well. Brent Key, who's the new coach, I don't know if you know much about Brent Key, who's the coach of Georgia Tech, but he was the former offensive line coach at Alabama for 3 years. As a matter of fact, he was there when they won 3 SEC championships and a national championship in 2017. Georgia Tech's going to be a whole lot better, but we held our own. Coach Pugh was very positive after the game. The kids were very positive after the game because we did some things. And then when I go back and look at Charlotte and Maryland, I don't know who eventually won that game, but I had no idea Maryland would not run away with Charlotte, but Charlotte held their own. I don't remember if they won or not, but which lends us to believe that we're a whole lot better than what we think we are, and that's going to be good going into the Citadel because that's going to be an important game because Maurice Drayton, who's the new coach at the Citadel, is a former South Carolina State assistant coach. So all eyes will be on Orangeburg the third week in September.
Yeah, Bulldogs are struggling. Elsewhere around the state, over the weekend, you had the Wofford losing at William and Mary. Presbyterian beat Virginia Lynchburg. And you had the Citadel losing at home to Campbell. Erskine losing at Shorter. Limestone lost to West Alabama. Benedict and Allen, however, both picked up wins over Edward Waters and Columbus State, respectively. Okay, so we've talked about the games we all covered. As promised, it's a host-free Monday. You weren't here last Monday, Ernest, when we enacted this. Basically, we sit back, we take the phone calls, we let the callers within reason direct the show. If they have a question for us or a comment towards us, we will respond. We will have Zach Willis first and 10, 7:30, of course, as he's going to break down the USC and Clemson games. And I've got a few notes to tell you as well, including Clemson, Florida State, a noon kickoff. A noon kickoff.
That might change.
No.
I don't think so.
No, it's set for ABC.
Okay.
Yeah. And Pat had a great comment in a text today. He's like, Clemson's playing FAU this Saturday at 8 and Florida State next Saturday at noon.
Explain that one.
Yeah, I mean, that is just beyond making any sense. South Carolina, Mississippi State will be a night game, 7:30 at the Williams-Brice Stadium on the SEC Network. With that being said, it's a host-free Monday night. Did I not mention North Greenville beating Newberry, or did I skip that?
You skipped that.
I'm sorry. North Greenville
That's
beats,
a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Especially going into Newberry and winning that game and actually leading 17-7 at the half.
That's a very nice win for the Crusaders.
That's a good win for them.
All right, Hank in Columbia, the floor is yours on this Monday night. Welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Corn. I was at the Carolina game, and it was good to see them play a lot of those young guys, and on the offensive line, even though it's still not where it needs to be or not great. I noticed they had a couple of linemen that seemed like they had held out that got dinged up in the Charlotte game, and so to see two or three true freshmen out there playing offensive line and trying to hold on even against Furman, I thought was all right. But Corn, I want to ask you a question. As you said, we can pose your question.
Mm-hmm.
Rattler played great and has been playing great. And when Lenora Sellers came in there, of course, he played great, as we've been hearing in the background. But I thought his best play to me, the most outstanding play to me, was when he juked the DN.
Yeah.
At 6'3", 245, he froze and stopped on a dime to send the DN get all balanced before he made that play. And that just showed what type of athlete he was at that size to go with the accuracy of his arm. So I just wanted to hear what you thought about it with just that play.
All right, thank you. Very impressive by the freshman out of South Florence. And for a guy that size, you're right, to have that kind of athleticism is impressive. A big arm. I mean, a big arm. That touchdown throw that he threw to another freshman, Tyshawn Russell, where he was rolling to his right under duress, flushed out of the pocket, and put it on a dime. I mean, he put it right on the money. So the future of Gamecock quarterbacking looks bright when you consider not just who's in the room now, because Luke Doty will be back, assuming Rattler moves on, but now you've got Sellers, and then joining them next year will be Dante Reno, and they've already got a 2026 quarterback commitment in Duckworth, who's having a big season in Alabama. So future quarterbacking in South Carolina looks tremendous. And I've got to say that Dowell Loggins looks like he knows what he's doing in coaching quarterbacks and coaching them from an NFL perspective, calling plays in the passing game. Their passing game looks very sophisticated. It's not sophisticated in terms of the names of the plays and the way the plays or the routes are run, but just the way he calls them in sequence and the way he puts Rattler in a position to make plays. And, of course, Xavier Leggett is off to a tremendous start as well. We will continue with your calls after the break.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Cloudy this evening with a low of 70. Tomorrow will be a lot like today with a mix of sun and clouds and a higher temp of 88. Things change Wednesday, mostly cloudy with a 40% chance of thunderstorms. Starting Thursday, falls in the air with highs in the low 80s and lows dipping into the upper 50s. Brian Leonard with you on Point Local Weather.
Have you heard about the South Carolina Wise Woman Program? It's a program for women aged 40 to 64 who are South Carolina residents and meet some other requirements. It's a program to promote lasting heart-healthy lifestyles for women and help them reduce their risk of heart disease and stroke through screenings and services for high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, and so much more. Ask your healthcare provider about it, or you can learn more at cdc.gov/wisewoman.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting lawyers for Donald Trump have asked the federal judge presiding over his election subversion case in Washington to recuse herself. They say her past public statements about the former president call into question whether she can be fair. The recusal motion Monday from Trump's lawyers takes aim at U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, a former assistant public defender who was nominated to the bench by President Barack Obama. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has departed for Russia, where he's expected to hold a highly anticipated meeting with President Vladimir Putin that has sparked Western concerns about a potential arms deal for Moscow's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin's website said Kim's visit is at Putin's invitation and would take place in the coming days. On Wall Street, the Dow by 87 points. More details at srnnews.com.
There's more than one kind of customer when it comes to Shooter's Choice. First, there's the customer who knows what's what, has a pretty good idea of what he or she likes. You're looking for a few things. First, a good selection. Yep, Shooter's Choice has a huge selection. Firearms, ammo, accessories, optics, even gun safes. You're looking for good and fair pricing. Oh yeah, Shooter's has been around as your local stop forever because they treat you right. And how about customer service? Absolutely the best you'll find anywhere. The folks who work at Shooter's Choice are shooters and hunters just like you. They know their products. They can answer your question. And that brings me to the other type of customer. Someone maybe more like me. No expert for sure, but wants to learn from the right people. I don't need some big box store guy who works in the shoe department half a week, sporting goods the other half. I need the experts at Shooter's Choice who will treat me right, answer my questions as simple as they might be. They'll make my experience excellent. Online, it's shooterschoicesc.com or visit them in person on Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia. Make it your first choice, your best choice. Make it Shooter's Choice.
Dave Ramsey here. Do you want your money to work for you rather than you working for your money? Go see my friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They're not a mega bank and have been serving the Midlands since 1936, offering good old-fashioned customer service and free services. They'll look out for your financial well-being. With 14 locations, check them out today at palmettocitizens.org. Federally insured by the NCUA.
The pipes burst, you're getting the repairs done. Now it's time for your flooring. This is where the flooring department shines. We don't have a huge multi-million-dollar showroom, but we all buy from the same manufacturers, so why pay more? We're locally owned and have 30 years experience in the flooring industry, and we stand by our work. Get tremendous customer service and great pricing with the flooring department, 951-3567, or online at theflooringdepartment.com. That's 951-3567 or 951-FLOR, the flooring department.
September means football and fall temps rolling in, but when it comes to our favorite fur babies, the shelters are still full from summer, and those dogs and cats need you more than ever. Columbia Animal Shelter proudly takes part in the Best Friends Animal Society's National Adoption Weekend with free adoptions on all pets on the 15th and 16th. Visit petfinder.com to see which puppy or kitty cat you'd like as a part of your family. Be a hero and adopt your next pet. Visit petfinder.com today.
Hey, it's Jay with the Cigar Militia, Columbia's premium cigar store. Have you noticed the change in weather? Some people call it fall. We call it cigar smoking season. Or better yet, it's football weather. Come in and check out our humidor and do what I do and get your go-to stick or try something new. We've got an awesome staff willing to walk you through and help you find your new favorite. And besides, you're going to need some celebration cigars for when your favorite team wins the big game. The Cigar Militia, 1410 Colonial Life Boulevard.
All right, welcome back. Sports Talk Media Network. Phil Kornbluth, Chris Bergen, Pat Daniel, Ernest Robinson, 888-898-2525, South Carolina Education Lottery. Lucky number for you here on Sports Talk. We'll turn it back over to you in just a second. We do have a couple lines open if you want to grab a line to join us here on this host-free Monday night. But I want to remind you that the weather is starting to maybe a little bit cool off, starting to feel a little bit like fall. It's a great time of the year to get down to the coast of South Carolina for a relaxing weekend or maybe a week or longer. Or maybe you need to go ahead and make those plans for next summer. Give Jimmy Smith a call at pauliesvacationrentals.com. His phone number is 843-237-4246. James Smith Real Estate. They'll take care of all your needs along the coast for that perfect beach getaway. The number again, 843-237-4246. Good time to call Jimmy. He's in a good mood. His Gamecocks won over the weekend. Always makes him happy. When the Gamecocks win, you might even get a little bit better discount than normal. Let me pass on a couple of other quick notes and then back to your phone calls, as it is a host-free Monday. But the hosts do have some duties that we have to carry out, even when it's a host-free day. So the latest from the stat sheet for Gamecocks, Tigers, and Shots in the stats this week. The Gamecocks nationally 34th in total offense, 58th in scoring, 89th in total defense, and 87th in scoring. Clemson is 7 in total offense, 37 in scoring, 8 in total defense, 65 in scoring. Coastal is 82nd in total offense, 110th in scoring, 101st in total defense, and 64th in scoring. Speaking of stats, speaking of Spencer Rattler in the SEC and national stats, how about this? Completion percentage. I'm going to give you the SEC rank and then the NCAA rank. Completion percentage, first and third. Completions per game, first and seventh. Passing efficiency, third and 13th. Passing yards per game, first and third. And Xavier Legette is first in the SEC in receiving yards per game, and he is number 2 nationally. Can they live strictly off the passing game against Georgia? The Gamecocks are now 27-point underdogs. I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, take the points.
That's an awful lot in a conference game. And how good is Georgia? I mean, they've looked impressive. I think they're really, really good, but they haven't beaten anybody of merit, right?
Take the points.
The thing lost in this is the Gamecocks are eventually going to have to run the football, and they got to find some success running the football. You just can't go back to pass every down against Georgia, and they know that's coming.
Take the points. Colorado's doing it.
Yeah, Colorado's in the Pac-12 for this
whatever
year.
they're in.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Would you rather have Spencer Rattler or Shedeur Sanders as your quarterback?
Oh, there's no doubt. I'll take Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur Sanders is much improved.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I wasn't a big fan of Shedeur until I saw him against TCU. I can tell he's much more polished. He's been taught.
Did y'all face him at Jackson State?
Yes.
So he was the quarterback.
And he was not very good because he couldn't make decisions. He'd stare down receivers. He still stares down his receivers, but he goes through his progressions a whole lot more. And so you can tell he's been taught. And I think that's – and nobody can put a ceiling on how hard you'll work. And it's obvious he's been working in this game. Rattler, though, the sky's the limit. If he can get some help, that offensive line, I'm not convinced yet.
No, you're right. Rattler was named the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Kirby Smart said today he's got a few injured players, including he is dealing with receiver Ladd McConkey, who hasn't played yet. He's a good player for them. He's a real good possession receiver. He's got a back issue going on. Running back DeJuan Edwards and safety Javon Bullard, they're all on the injured list. Bullard with a left ankle sprain. They don't know more about him being available for this week yet. They expected Edwards and McConkey will be able to play against the Gamecocks at this point. Last night, Shane Beamer, he did not really add a whole lot to information about his injured players. Everybody that was questionable going into the game Saturday and who got hurt in the game Saturday, got banged up. They're all questionable for this coming week. Otherwise, I think he's expecting those who are not out totally to be able to play against Georgia.
Phil, one quick point about that game. We talk about the offensive line, as Ernest just mentioned. The North Carolina game, was that the norm or was that the exception? We don't know yet. But one thing they do have in their favor, the Gamecocks, that is Georgia through 2 games against inferior opponents. I think we'll all agree that they only have 1 sack as a team. So we saw UNC gets 9 against the Gamecocks. I believe Furman had 1 on Saturday night.
What's the over-under on that?
That's a great question right there. But is Georgia's pass rush maybe a little bit down from what it's been in recent years? Maybe the offensive line won't have as tough of a challenge as maybe in years past against the Bulldogs.
Well, their defensive numbers thus far in terms of total defense and all that is not the brick wall that they've been in recent years. But again, let's see how they perform. Now they're stepping up in class and going into to SEC play. Let's see how they react. They're still very, very talented. The thing about Georgia that's so good, Of course, Carson Beck's off to a good start. Their offensive line is so solid. Their 2 tight ends, Oscar Delpa is now starting at tight end. And the other one who's the great
Brock
one.
Bowers.
Yeah, he's back. So their offense is so good. And I think their defense is probably going to be pretty rock solid as well. Let's see, a couple of other things, and then we'll get back to the phone calls. 888-898-2525. As you probably know, ESPN is back on Charter and Spectrum.
What I tell you?
Yeah,
what did I tell you?
You named
what
it.
What did I tell you guys? They would have it back before Monday Night Football. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, Monday Night Football tonight. Here we go.
You nailed it.
The power of the Shield, my friends. Never underestimate the power of the NFL.
Heisman Trophy odds from Bet Online. Caleb Williams 4-1, Jordan Travis 5-1, Quinn Ewers 8-1, Michael Penix Jr. 10-1, J.J. McCarthy 14-1, Cade Klubnik 80-1, and Spencer Rattler 100-1.
Explain that.
Hey, how in the world is Klubnik ahead of Rattler in those numbers?
That's Vegas.
That makes no sense.
That's Vegas. And let's see. I wanted to mention too. We've got odds for the national championship. If I can put my eyes on it, Georgia, of course, right now is the favorite of Vegas to win another national championship.
I can't believe I'm going to comment on this, but Klubnik, the reason Klubnik is where he is based on who he will play, based on who Spencer's going to play. When you look at the competition, Klubnik's got a better chance of doing something. The only games you got to worry about is Florida State, Notre Dame, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well, Rattler's got to go through the SEC.
If he can do it. But you know what? The SEC's only 1-6 against Power 5 opponents. They're not off to a great start. National championship odds, Bet Online, Georgia 5-2, Michigan 21-4, Florida State 13-2, Texas 10-1, Ohio State 11-1, Southern Cal 16-1, Clemson 75-1, and the Gamecocks are 400-1. Furman is 7th in the Stats Perform FCS Top 25 this week, and number 8 in the AFCA FCS ranking this week. And going to go to calls. I just want to say this. Did Alabama lose at home Saturday?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think that's what I heard.
Did Alabama lose at home Saturday and lose at home Saturday by double digits?
Yes.
Okay. Have any, let me get the right verb or the right working verb there, helping verb. Have any of the national blowhards called for the retirement of Nick Saban or questioned his lack of using the transfer portal in big numbers or, intimated that he knows nothing about coaching the game anymore? Have any of those blowhards, Alabama suck-up media people out there, suggested the same? My point is, Dabo Swinney had to go through all that, not that he cares, but after the loss to Duke, oh, it's over. The era is over. The run is over. He's got to go recruit the portal. He's just not taking enough transfers to be able to win, blah, 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 nausea, throw up after another. Okay? Look, they did lose to Duke. At least it was a quality team, and Duke is a quality team, and it was on the road. And they did have a chance to win that game if they had taken care of their own business. Alabama loses at home to a very quality team, a very good team, but they lose at home by double digits. So my point is, why are people so quick to jump on Dabo Swinney when it turns sour nationally? What is it that they don't like about Dabo Swinney?
Dabo has this air about him. He's always had this air about him that he is up on everything and that everyone believes everything he says. And I think that's the problem that people have with him. I'm not going to mention the SEC figurehead that talked about Dabo and his mystique is over. But, I think that's the point, that people don't believe Dabo. And that's unfortunate because when you have a person who tries to do right and constantly tries to do right, and I can't believe I'm here defending Dabo first off. Yeah. So let me get off that. Yeah. But I think people have a problem with that. I mean, let me tie that to Deion Sanders. I mean, now Deion Sanders rubs me the wrong way sometimes as well. But when you have someone who tries to live right and do right, and then they get kind of ostracized for it. I mean, what do you do? So I think Dabo's in that way, Deion and Dabo have some commonalities there that surprised me, and I can't believe I'm even verbalizing that.
I'm not sure I'd put Deion, his personal life, in the same category as Dabo's, the way they live their personal lives. One is flamboyant and.
Well, to be honest with you, Deion at one time was that way, but he's really, Christian values, family values, teaching guys to be responsible. I mean, he has grown. He's evolved as a person. The Deion you and I grew up with is not the Deion. Yeah. That's because it's Coach Prime.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go to the break, and then when we come back, we'll turn it back over to the callers, 888-898-2525, and we'll keep that rolling to the bottom of the next hour, working some recruiting for you as well. But I wanted to get out that information while we had it here at our fingertips. By the way, FAU, Clemson plays a team called Florida Atlantic this weekend. You might have heard of them. They're not very good. And they did have a receiver catch I think it was 11 passes or maybe 12 passes in their game against Ohio this past weekend. Be right back.
Dumpster Plus is your solution to a more cost-effective and professional work site. Dumpster Plus provides a roll-off dumpster and porta-john in one. Give them a call at 803-500-5094 and ask them about 2 services for the price of one. It's 1 call, 1 delivery, 2 services. Locally owned and operated in Columbia, and that means you'll talk to a real live local person, ready to get what you need with a 24-hour turnaround guaranteed. Whether your worksite is residential or commercial, big or small, near or far, you'll save money with Dumpster Plus. Waste management solutions never look so good. Call Dumpster Plus at 803-500-5094. That's 803-500-5094 for Dumpster Plus.
We're with Major Billy Downer of the Department of Natural Resources. Major Downer, it's the fall in South Carolina. That means it's deer season. What do people need to know about?
That's right, Phil. It is deer season. We always want to remind hunters to identify know the identifying features of the game you're hunting. Make sure that it's a deer before you take that shot. When walking to and from your stand in low light, use a flashlight so that no one will mistake you for a deer. For more information on hunting safety and more information on deer season, listen to our show on Wednesday nights on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Football season is upon us, and that means Columbia is welcoming fans from around the corner and across the country. No matter where you're from, Gamecocks love coming together for game day energy that can only be found in South Carolina's capital city. Book hotel rooms, find pre- and post-game activities, and plan your tailgate spread with local favorites from pimento cheese to barbecue at ExperienceColumbiaSC.com. We'll see you soon, and go Gamecocks!
Hi, I'm Jim Corbett. I've been an attorney for more than 30 years. There's one thing I've learned about injury cases. It's you need the personal touch. You need the lawyer to get to know you and describe your damages. You don't want a case manager talking to an insurance company, then talking to you, and then talking to maybe to a lawyer with limited experience at the last minute to try to settle a case. I talk to you. I find out what your case is about. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com for your injury cases.
South Carolina's taste buds have spoken, and they're asking for beef. There are more than 7,800 farms raising cattle from pasture to plate in the Palmetto State. So whether it's steaks on the grill before the big game, sirloin medallions plated for date night, or burgers with a family, make sure beef is a part of your playbook this football season. Smoked, grilled, and slow roasted. Find the best way to enjoy your beef at scattle.org. Beef. It's what's for dinner in South Carolina. Funded by the South Carolina Beef Council, part of the Beef Checkoff program.
You've put in the work for your education. The extra early, extra late, extra work. That's because you understand education opens doors to better pay, better opportunities, and a better you. Being educated about playing the lottery is no different. It helps you be a better player, one who knows when to play and when to take a rain check. The lottery's a game, so let's keep it fun. Learn more at SCEducationLottery.com/betteryou.
Farm Bureau Insurance's agricultural roots and ties to South Carolina farmers have shaped the company's culture and work ethic, providing a unique customer experience. Customers are treated like people, not policies. Now, while other insurance companies may have a one-size-fits-all approach to handling customers, we believe you need to be valued and treated right. Our claims professionals work until the job is done, and our agents still believe in the commitment that comes with a handshake. Call Buddy Bridges in Clinton and Lawrence at 864-923-2174 for all of your auto, home, and life insurance needs.
All right, one more quick comment, then back to your phone calls. Hey, Chris, Pat, Ernest, have y'all ever been in love before? With love? Have you been in love with love before?
I thought you were going to go with the Yankees, not the Packers.
I'm in love with. I'm telling you, we looked really good yesterday. Really, really.
One game
scary,
against the team you always
good,
beat.
Really scary, good. I love my love. Give me some love. Show me the love.
One game against the team Green Bay always beats.
Let's go to. All right, it's time for the callers to take over once again, and we will only respond if you ask. So let's go to Ron in Greenville. Appreciate the patience. Ron, welcome into Sports Talk. The floor is yours.
Hey, Phil, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Man, y'all had me sort of hot there to start with, talking about Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney, nobody ought to question one thing he does. What's he had? 10 straight years with 10 wins or more? I may be wrong when I say it, but it's real close.
He's been good.
This coming week, Shane Beamer in South Carolina's got to go down to Georgia. Georgia's about a 27-point favorite. So that might tell you something. He said they really haven't played nobody yet and showed anybody anything, but they're that big a favorite, so maybe the Gamecocks can play them a little bit better. I know Clemson's a 23-point favorite over Florida Atlantic. And the Braves won the first game today, 10-8. And they just now started the second game. The Braves are playing really well right now.
That they are. Ron, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Braves are doing their thing, rolling into the playoffs. Yeah.
They've been playing really well all year.
Yeah, they've not
they're
really
an amazingly good team.
let up at all this season for the most. What's been their longest losing streak? Like maybe 3 or 4 games? They've had that kind of a year. Been very, very good. What you got, Pat?
12 straight years Dabo Swinney has had at least 10 wins with Clemson, by the way. So, yeah, it has been a really impressive streak. But, again, Ron and other folks out there, personally, I don't think anybody's above reproach. And when you play to the level that we've seen Clemson get to and that Dabo Swinney has had his program capable of, criticism is going to be fair when we see something less than that. He has said over and over for years and years, best is the standard. And if what we are seeing on the field is no longer in that best or seeing it slip a little bit, maybe a bit below that, we have to talk about it. We have to point that out. And it's worth questioning certain decisions that have been made over the years. And I think that's what so many of us are kind of scratching our heads over, is it's hard to identify one particular thing, whether it's the offensive play calling, the defensive play calling. Is it recruiting? Is it the portal? Is it NIL? Is it et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? We're all trying to kind of figure out what is it that brought Clemson back a slight step after those 6 consecutive college football playoff appearances, now 2 years in a row without it, this potentially being a third year. They're going to have to win out. I think we all agree on that. They're going to have to win out, and impressively, to get past that loss against Duke if they want to get back this year and avoid 3 straight years without a playoff appearance.
Okay, back to the phones we go, because the callers on the show on Monday nights here on Sports Talk, it's host free for part of it. Host free Monday night, the Monday after the Manic Monday here on Sports Talk, and we go to Gamecock Larry over in Swansea. Gamecock Larry, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. Clemson will lose 4 games this year. Now, summer's over with. I'm glad I enjoyed what I sang. But let me say, Georgia, dogs, what you gonna do when the Gamecocks come and shine and beat you? You're going to sit in Athens and whine. I'll tell you the score, and I will not need no 27 points. I will not need 1 point. We gonna beat you, dogs. We gonna beat you. All you Dogs fans call me, and I might even give you 27. I won't give you. I will give you 13 though, and I might give you more if you talk right. Go Gamecocks! Feeling good like a Gamecock should, and I believe somebody told me Clemson fell out of the top 25.
They did.
Is that true? Is that true, Mr. Field?
It's true. It's true. It's true. True.
Dogs and Tigers is gone. Woo! Gamecocks. We are on the rise. Woo! Feeling good like a Gamecock should. Go Gamecocks.
All right.
Yes, the coach recorded that.
I did. Don't worry.
Man, sometimes, Gamecock Larry, sometimes his doctors slip a little something extra in his.
That's all right.
Not oxygen, but maybe something going into the veins or something. They slip a little something extra. Yeah. All right. Thank you there, Gamecock Larry. We appreciate that. Coming up on the top of the hour, we'll continue with more of your phone calls on the other side. That number is 888-898-2525. That is the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number. It is a host-free Monday night. So you got a good 25 minutes after the break to take over the show and share your thoughts, your comments, and we can start looking ahead to the South Carolina-Georgia game. In particular, the Gamecocks, as I mentioned, are 27-point underdogs. I just think that is, Vegas is being, they're never suckers. They're trying to sucker some people. They're never the suckers. But, Rattler's going to throw some touchdown passes against these guys. He's going to have himself a pretty decent game.
The reason the line is what it is they're just trying to encourage action on both sides.
Yeah,
so that's the whole point. That's the whole point.
But it's reputation. It's Georgia, 2-time defending national champs.
Sure.
Currently number 1 team in the country, and here come the little bitty Gamecocks who couldn't beat the Blue Bellies in Charlotte, and et cetera, et cetera. And
let's just stay away from that 27.
You'd stay away from it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I would take it. If I were a gambling man, I would write it in blood. I would prick my finger and write it in blood. South Carolina, take the 27. Yes, I really believe that. Hit the break, top of the hour. We'll be back.
By the way, before we do what's supposed to happen here, thank you for pushing the button. I thank you. Programming thanks you. America thanks you.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, fireplaces, summer sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. Remembrances of the 3,000 people killed during the terrorist attacks on the United States on September 11th, 22 years ago today. In New York City, Margaret Rourke, who lost her cousin Stephen Fiorelli on 9/11, says on this day, this is where she needs to be.
I used to go to work, but I realized that I wasn't really concentrating on anything, so I just used to take a vacation day. And I come down here, I listen to the names. You're around people who feel the same way, so it's better.
In Shanksville, Pennsylvania, Flight 93 National Memorial Superintendent Stephen Clark says that flight's passengers committed one of American history's most courageous acts in forcing down the plane.
Their actions unquestionably saved untold number of lives and preserved the U.S. Capitol, the symbol and the center of our democracy.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is headed to Vladivostok for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller says the Russia-North Korea meeting obviously means Vladimir Putin is looking for arms from Kim Jong-un.
I will remind both countries that any transfer of arms from North Korea to Russia would be in violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions. And we, of course, have aggressively enforced our sanctions against entities that fund Russia's war effort, and we will continue to enforce those sanctions and will not hesitate to impose new sanctions as appropriate.
The Kremlin's website says Kim's visit is at Putin's invitation and would take place in the coming days. On Wall Street, the arrows were up. The Dow rose 87 points. The Nasdaq rose 156. The S&P 500 advanced 30. More at townhall.com.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I'm Corey, and this is my story. I was going through some financial troubles paying off my credit cards. I was paying high interest rates, and it just wasn't getting any better. And I knew I had to do something. So my mom told me about Trinity, and so I decided to call. Trinity was able to do something that I couldn't. I'm paying off my debt. I'm saving thousands, and things are really looking up. I promise you guys, you will not regret it when you call Trinity, because it was such a relief and less stress in my life, and it was the best thing I could have done for myself, because once I called Trinity, they took care of me, and I felt such a relief, a weight off my shoulders. Trinity was great to work with. They wanted to help me. I love it.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
I'm Corey, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-990-6976.
Moroccan soldiers and aid teams are battling to reach remote quake-hit towns as the death toll rises past 2,400 from the 6.8 earthquake. Correspondent Karen Chamas reports.
Rescue workers dig through twisted metal and concrete to pull out bodies from the town of Wirgan, about 37 miles from Marrakesh. As the bodies were pulled out, locals cried in dismay. The United Nations estimates that 300,000 people were affected by the magnitude 6.8 quake. In Marrakesh, families huddled in squares outside with little more than a blanket for shelter. Moroccan officials have so far accepted government-offered aid from just 4 countries, fearing a lack of coordination if too many join the rescue effort. I'm Karen Chavas.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Cloudy this evening with a low of 70. Tomorrow will be a lot like today with a mix of sun and clouds and a higher temp of 88. Things change Wednesday, mostly cloudy with a 40% chance of thunderstorms. Starting Thursday, falls in the air with highs in the low 80s and lows dipping into the upper 50s. I'm Brian Leonard with your On Point local weather.
As a kid, you dreamed of being a firefighter one day. Now, the opportunity is yours. Dance to the sound of sirens. Live your dream. Become a part of a team, a family. Visit scvolunteerfire.org to find out more.
Welcome back to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. You can reach the guys with the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number, 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now back to Phil, Chris, and Pat with the second hour of Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Okay, we're back. It's Sports Talk Media Network. It is a manic Monday, the Monday after a busy weekend in sports, and it's also a host-free Monday night. Your chance to take over the program with your commentary, or if you have questions or a point you want to make towards one of us, feel free to do so. The phone number, 888-898-2525. That's how you can reach us here on Sports Talk. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, it'll be First and 10 with Zach Willis, who has been feverishly breaking down the video from this past weekend, looking at the South Carolina Clemson games and looking ahead to this week's game, no doubt. Should also mention, of course, over the weekend, the race at Kansas, an overtime event, in the second race in the playoffs. So now they are to the first cutoff race. Tyler Reddick taking advantage of the late pits where they put on 4 tires, and that car took off over the last couple of laps, and he pulled away to the win. He looks very, very strong at this stage after a runner-up finish in the Southern 500, then a win yesterday. He looks very, very strong through 2 races of the playoffs. Of course, he has moved on, and now all eyes will be on that cut line area this coming weekend. I think is it Bristol this weekend?
Night race at Bristol.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's going to be I love that setup. I love Bristol as a cutoff event, don't you?
Agreed. Short track race for a cutoff is exceptional because guys are going to be bumping and banging, especially that third stage, trying to get to the checkered flag if they've got to win. You know, guys 16th, 15th, 14th, any of those guys down there below the cut line, they're probably in a position, several of them, I don't have the stats in front of me, but several of them may be in a position they've got to win to advance. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of hectic racing, and a short track is the perfect place to do it. And, oh, by the way, if you don't have anything to concern yourself about, you can just take out your vengeance on somebody from earlier in the year.
That's right.
That's always a good thing, too.
So you got Truex Jr., you got Wallace, you got Stenhouse Jr., you got McDowell. Those are the 4 of the 16 playoff drivers. Those are the 4 under the cut line. And Truex Jr. on points is the one that's got the best chance. He's 7 points below the cut. He's 7 points below the cut line. So, I mean, he's got to move up or he's got to win the race. Kevin Harvick is the one who's sitting in the hot seat. He's in 12th position at +7. Logano is +12. So we'll have to wait and see what happens if one of those 4 below are going to win in advance and knock somebody out, or just what is going to happen. Right now, Kyle Larson leads the points with Reddick second and Hamlin third. But I thought it was a good race. I like that race at Kansas. I like the way those guys can pretty much keep the throttle wide open as they go through those turns and get 3 and 4 wide through those wide turns they have there.
Yeah, that's fine. Kansas is okay. It's just one of those races that's too long. Another one of those tracks that probably should have a 300-mile race, not 400. But, it is what it is. Especially now that you're into football season, NASCAR needs to do everything it possibly can to enhance the racing. And I think shorter races during the playoffs would work.
Okay. Just don't touch the Southern 500.
No, I get that.
4.5 hours at Darlington is just fine.
But all these other tracks, they are too long, and especially now, the NFL is underway, and NASCAR is way down the priority list for sports fans, so you've got to find a way to make yourself a priority. Don't have long, boring races.
Our poll question of the week goes back to the South Carolina-Georgia game. Georgia's a 27-point favorite. The over-under is 55. So 27-point favorite, over-under of 55. What is the smart play here? 232 votes in today, and 44% say take the Gamecocks and the 27. 29.3 say take Georgia, lay the 27. 20.3 say take the over of 55, and 6.5 say take the under of 55.
I like the under. I just don't. I know Spencer Rattler's thrown for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. I just don't see that. I see this game being something like a 24-10, something like that nature. I just don't see this being an offensive explosion. I'd like for it to be that way. I'd love for him to throw 4 touchdown passes, but this is Georgia.
Safe to say, Chris, that and Pat and Ernest, it's safe to say that Spencer Rattler will be the best quarterback on the field in Athens Saturday?
Yeah, no doubt. But he'll be also the most prepared.
He's got to be.
In other words, the defense will be most prepared for him.
And he's got to be the best on the field.
Oh, yeah.
For the Gamecocks to have any chance.
I mean, you think he's got to throw for 400 yards?
I don't know if he's got to do 400, but he's got to duplicate. He's got to duplicate what he's done the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think if Carolina can score 4 touchdowns, they could possibly win this game. I don't think that
28 points.
28 points. I think I don't know that Georgia can do that. But again, I mean, this is. I just don't see the Gamecocks. I'm going back to I talk about running the football. I think you've got to be able to keep Georgia off the field. And I think if Carolina scores, they're going to score quickly. I don't think they can score often enough to keep that pace.
Defensively, of course, you got to defend the tight ends at Georgia, maybe first and foremost. I mean, the running game is obviously a big part of what they do, a huge part of what they do, and their running backs are really good. But, gosh, they do such a great job of getting Bowers the ball, and now Oscar Delp, who flashed some last year as a freshman, a guy that South Carolina wanted very badly, and Clemson wanted very badly. He's fit right in with them as well. They're very, very good. Their quarterbacks are always good, no matter who it is, at finding the tight ends, usually in the middle of the field, and they make big plays. Down the field, they've got good speed at wide receiver, and they can beat you deep as well. Then you kind of play soft and you play back, and then they hit you with the running back. I mean, their offense and their offensive line, I was looking at their offensive line again today once the depth charts came out. It's like they never change people on the offensive line. I mean, it's like they lose a great offensive lineman to the NFL, and they just plug in the next guy in their recruiting class. They just their recruiting has been at such a high level and continues to be that way. There's just been no drop off that I can tell in recent years. Of course, they've won national championships. There's been no drop off in the performance of their offensive lines, and their offensive lines, for some reason, they're able to stay pretty much intact. They started the same five guys across the front so far this season. Green is the left tackle. Truss is the left guard. Van Pran, a preseason All-SEC pick, is the center. Ratledge, with his mullet, is the right guard. And Mims, Marius Mims, one of the top high school recruits in the country when he came out, is the right tackle. These guys are mostly veterans, or if they weren't starters because of guys ahead of them, they've played a good bit. So that's a big bonus for Georgia, and it's something they keep replenishing that offensive line. That's why year in and year out they're going to be right there, because they're always going to have the skill position guys to fill in those spots to go with that big offensive line.
You know, it's unfortunate that the current offensive coordinator didn't have the cast that USC had last year to work with, because I just cringe every time I see Jaheim Bell on the field with Florida State, because you talk about the tight ends at Georgia. USC had one, and they really didn't know what to do with him until later in the season. And by the time they figured out, with kids nowadays, these are kids that want gratification now. They're not going to wait. But I mean, when you get a kid like that, you've got to be able to nurture them and keep them. And so I just kind of shake my head when you start talking about tight ends.
Speaking of Georgia's offensive line, here's Monroe Freeling, the freshman out of Oceanside Collegiate, and he's third team. He's on their depth chart at left tackle. Wow. He is their third team. So, and look, if Edwards can't go, he's not 100%, then you just give the ball to Kendall Milton, who, of course, is outstanding. Now, their defense, the last 2 years, they've been hard hit with departures off their defense. It might be a defense that's not as well known. If you're not a true fan of Georgia football, it might not be as well known as some of the other defensive players. But still, it's a good group. You've got Michael Williams starting at one. They run a three-man front, so it's Michael Williams or Tremel Wartower or the former Gaffney standout Tyrion Ingram Dawkins at one defensive line spot. Then it's Zion Logue or Warren Brinson at the other, and then the other is Nazir Stackhouse, who's 6'3", 220. Then the linebackers, Chaz Chambliss, he was a really good player coming out of Georgia High School, heavily recruited when he was coming out. Jamon Dumas Johnson, the inside backer. Shmael Munden, who's probably their best defensive player. Munden at inside linebacker or near the top. The corners are Kamari Lassiter or Nyland Green. Green was heavily recruited by Clemson. The other corner, Dalen Everett or Julian Humphrey. And the safeties, Malik Starks and Javon Bullard, if Bullard is able to play. And then the star, kind of their nickel guy, is Tyke Smith. So some guys, I recognize those names from recruiting on Georgia, and a few newcomers there. But they'll be solid. They'll be strong across the board. It's going to be a tough one for the Gamecocks, Chris. But, I mean, there's no reason to think, at the very least, there's no reason for South Carolina not to go into that game in Athens and play competitive football. Yes, you got to get a running game going. They are going to have to play turnover-free. The secondary is going to have to not let the Georgia receivers get behind them for big plays. They've got to kind of take the crowd out of the game if you can there in Athens, because that crowd is so loud. It's a CBS game at 3:30. A lot of hype for the SEC game of the week for CBS, which is starting to run out for CBS. Anyway, they can go in there and be competitive. Now, can they win? I mean, certainly I believe they will. If they're going to lose, they'll lose within the window of 27. Can they take the Dogs into the fourth quarter with a legitimate shot to win the game?
That's the question. Certainly has not gone well for them the last couple of years against Georgia. And of course, Georgia's, Sanford Stadium's even more hostile now that they don't allow kids in there because it's not a family-friendly environment, right? From the message board guy last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really.
But if you look at Georgia thus far, and again, you have to kind of measure, all right, are these numbers because they're as good defensively as we expect them to be, or is it because they played UT Martin and Ball State? I guess we'll find out on Saturday, but they're still only allowing 138 yards per game passing. And there's no way on this earth that the Gamecocks can stay anywhere close to competitive if Rattler doesn't throw for over 300 yards, at least. If he's only got 150, there's no shot. That means they're all over him. He's made some mistakes. They can't run the football, and the offense is going to have to, obviously, as Ernest was pointing out, we got to find some way to run it a little bit. And just enough to try and keep that pass rush off of Rattler, because we saw when you don't have the lack of a run game and you face a front seven that can get pressure on you like North Carolina did, you see what happens. Rattler spent most of that game on his backside. He'll do it again this weekend down in Athens if that's the case.
Now, I believe in watching today's football, I believe you can win games with a 85% passing attack and a 15% running attack. Okay, now
I don't know that you're that far off.
I think you can if you've got the receivers. I think they're going to have a healthy Juice Wells. If a Marion Brown's healthy, Xavier Legette, they got to get more from their tight ends. I would say the tight end room has been a little bit disappointing through two games in terms of production. Now, maybe they're not getting open. Maybe they're not able to get open. Maybe Rattler is locking in on Legette. But they got to get more out of Trey Knox and Joshua Simon. And then you got to get Wells going. Wells played a little bit the other night. A healthy Wells and a healthy Legette and a healthy Brown. And then you get something going out of Knox. That's a pretty strong offensive unit from a passing standpoint. And you know what? If you can't run it, then keep the running back in to block. Keep him in the block. Have 6 guys blocking whatever they're throwing at you, 6 against 6, maybe be 6 against 5. If you can't block them 6 on 5, then you got a real problem. So live with the passing game. Live and die with the guy who gives you a chance. And we talked about this in the preseason when you're looking at South Carolina, and we wondered, could this offensive line play? Could you take a guy who's never been a running back and make him a successful running back? Those are still big question marks. But they can throw the ball, and they can catch the ball, and they can get yards after catch. You got to live with that right now as your identity and hope for the best.
One of the things I've learned through the years watching a lot of football is, and I've been around people that spend more time in figuring out what's going to be the numbers at the end of the game. Over the last 10 years, Georgia's averaging 37 points a game over the last 10 years against USC.
Yeah.
USC hadn't scored. I think the most points USC has scored in even the wins, there was the 38-35 win back in 2014. That's the only time. Yeah. So they've got to get to that point. I just don't think they got enough to do that.
Well, I mean, if you're South Carolina, you're playing the number 1 team in the country. If you at their place, if you're going to win, you got to figure it's going to be close and it's probably going to be relatively low scoring. Yeah. And you're going to have to get some help from Georgia. Georgia's going to have a bad day. They're going to have to turn it over. They're going to have some penalties, etc. That's about the only way South Carolina can win. And, of course, Rattler's got to have a fantastic day and has got to stay upright and not on his backside.
With that
You
being
said earlier.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, just real fast. You mentioned they need to have something out of the backfield, but if they're able to throw the ball 85% of the time, keep the running back in there at least as a blocker.
Well, let me say something.
Carryon Joyner has 9 catches through the first 2 games, but this past week was much more efficient. He had 4 catches for 53 yards. I would expect him to do a lot of blocking at the snap, but then leaking out, and you're going to see a lot of dump-off passes to him, and he converted that at a pretty high rate this past weekend.
But when I say 85%, I'm talking about catching the ball.
Gotcha.
Not just throwing it. They gotta
understood.
I mean, they gotta catch the football. They gotta be completing at a very high number. But I hear what you're saying. Same idea. All right, let's run to the break. We'll come back and give you the recruiting report tonight. Then at the bottom of the hour, it'll be 1st and 10 with Zach Willis, and we'll pose some of these thoughts of ours from non-coaching minds to a guy who has a coaching mind and has no doubt considered these things at one time or another when trying to figure out a game plan to work against an opponent that had a big edge against his teams. You know, your job as coach is to figure out a way to win when you are the inferior opponent. Coming up after the break, all that. Be right back.
It's Friday Night Live at Lakeside Lodge in Clemson, and you're invited. It's the place to be in Tiger Town the night before every Clemson football game, home or away. Lakeside has the fantastic restaurant and bar, Traditions on the Lake, plus an online TV show featuring Tiger legends Joe and Jeff Bostic. And we finish with the best live bands in the upstate. Friday, September 15th, it's the Eric Wheeler Crew and the Dave Landillo Band from Charleston on September 15th. It's Friday Night Live at Lakeside Lodge in Clemson.
South Carolinians, this message is for you, whether you or a loved one are about to receive Medicare or want to improve your current Medicare situation. Brian Spencer of Palmetto Medicare is the guy for you. This is Mike Morgan, and I've known Brian for over 20 years. He started Palmetto Medicare in 2005, and here's what I can tell you about Brian. He's not the best-looking guy in the world. He's not a poet. He's not a very good golfer. He can't sing at all, not even in the shower. All of this is true, but here's what else I can tell you about Brian Spencer. There's no one I would trust more with that all-important decision of who will handle your Medicare benefits. Palmetto Medicare is local, specific, and native to the Palmetto State. Any and all plans in South Carolina are available through Palmetto Medicare, and they offer a free annual Medicare and prescription review. So with that in mind, there's just one phone call to make, 803-960-9484, 803-960-9484. Let Brian Spencer do the one thing he is good at, helping people with all their Medicare needs.
Look no further than Founders Federal Credit Union for all your mortgage loan needs, whether you're a first-time home buyer or upgrading your space. Founders has many loan options to fit your lifestyle and your budget, such as low fixed and adjustable rate and flexible terms. Plus, Founders never charges PMI, private mortgage insurance. Our mortgage loan officers are here to answer your questions and help you start the home buying process. Stop by an office or visit foundersfcu.com to apply for a mortgage today. Federally insured by NCUA, membership qualification required. Terms and conditions apply. Equal housing lender.
George Bryant here for Tsunami Bar Sports, and some say the fun is in the winning. I say the fun is in the training. And Tsunami Robbie, what do you say?
George, we all know you get more done when you're having fun. This technology is different. It's engaging, but it's also a lot of fun to use.
Hi, this is Phil Kornblut. Be sure to click on the digital ad on SportsTalkSC.com and get 5% off any Tsunami Bar order using promo code BBB5. Don't wait, order today.
If you're looking to stay hydrated this summer, turn toward a southern favorite, sweet South Carolina watermelons. One slice is equivalent to a glass of water and is just as effective as sports drinks for hydration. If you don't believe us, you can ask the Palmetto State's top football teams. The SC Watermelon Association will be serving up slices after summer practice to keep our teams fueled and hydrated. Visit scwatermelon.org for all the details and look for ripe South Carolina watermelons in your hometown.
I'm State Treasurer Curtis Loftus. People often ask me, when should I start saving for college? And I always tell them, start today. September is College Savings Month, a great time to start saving for your child's education. Future Scholar makes it easy to open and manage your account online, and the plan offers options and benefits you won't find with a regular savings or investment account. So make this the month that you go to FutureScholar.com and see why it's a smart, easy way to save for college. FutureScholar.com.
This year's Carolina and Clemson Jackpot $5 scratch-off tickets give you a chance to win up to $200,000, whether you're a Gamecock or a Tiger. It's Palmetto Series time, so show your school spirit, feel that team pride, and get your tickets for a chance to win up to $200,000. As you know, in this state, winning the Palmetto Series does matter that much. See SCEducationLottery.com for odds and details.
Okay, we're back. It's Sports Talk, Sports Talk Media Network. I have to correct the South Carolina high school media pollsters in the 1A class. Latta is 4-0. They ranked them number 8.
Touche.
Latta's 4-0. Home of champions. -0.
You're sure about that?
They have beaten Mullins, East Clarendon, McBee, and Lee Central. Read it and weep.
No, I'm not disputing you. I just know how scores are.
You're disputing.
I'm just saying that Max Preps, take it for what it's worth, said Latta actually lost to Lee Central over the weekend.
No. Somebody mistakenly reported that.
Aha.
A Twitter site mistakenly reported that.
I'm stunned that there would be a high school score that was incorrect.
And why would you put Latta in the top 10 when they weren't in it last year if they lost last week, if they lost this past Friday?
It's a really good question.
Yeah. And this is cutting into our recruiting time here, but I just had to get that off my chest. On to recruiting, brought to you by Seawells. And here is Pat with the most important news of the night. Of course, that's the menu for the Seawells Daily Luncheon Buffet. Of course, today it's too late. Monday has passed us by, but there's still Tuesday through Friday, Pat.
They must have been closed today. Sorry, Phil. Couldn't tell you quick enough there. They have not released a menu yet for this week, so they must have been closed for a private event tomorrow. We'll make sure to get you that menu tomorrow night.
All right, very good. But if you go when it's open, it is a great buffet. Ernest, we got to go one day and chow down. It's only $14, so you can take me out on your SC State stipend that you get. 11 to 2 every Monday through Friday, and the very best in the catering business. That is Seawells as well. Their phone number is 803-771-7385. So, and we'll have to carry recruiting over. An update on Clemson target offensive tackle Daniel Akinkunmi, 6'5", 320 out of NFL Academy in London. Really nice kid. He sounds English because he's from London with that real heavy English accent.
You sound like you're from London.
Very good. Even more than that. So he had set up an official visit for Clemson this coming weekend, talking with offensive line coach Thomas Austin, but he's canceled it. He said he's not going anywhere else before he announces October the 12th because he's focusing on his high school team. They got a game coming up with a couple of American teams, he said. So he's focusing on his high school team, but Clemson, he said, is not out of it. We'll tell you more in a moment.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Cloudy this evening with a low of 70. Tomorrow will be a lot like today with a mix of sun and clouds and a higher temp of 88. Things change Wednesday, mostly cloudy with a 40% chance of thunderstorms. Starting Thursday, falls in the air with highs in the low 80s and lows dipping into the upper 50s. Brian Leonard with you on Point Local Weather.
Hi, I'm Glenn Matthews.
And I'm Melanie Matthews.
And we are the third-generation owners of Modern Exterminating Company.
In a time when corporate consolidation, high-pressure door knockers, and inexperienced startups are becoming the norm, isn't it nice to have an experienced, local, family-owned company that you can count on since 1955?
Modern Exterminating has been the local, independent industry leader in the pest control business for the last 67 years. Experience the local, family-owned difference for yourself at 803-765-2315 or pestfreesc.com.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting the Biden administration has cleared the way for the release of 5 American citizens detained in Iran by issuing a blanket waiver for international banks to transfer $6 billion in frozen Iranian money in South Korea without fear of U.S. sanctions. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken signed off on the move last week, but Congress was not notified of the decision until Monday. The head of one of Libya's rival governments says flooding that swept through the eastern parts of the North African nation has left as many as 2,000 people feared dead. The destruction appears greatest in the city of Derna. The community was formerly held by Islamic extremists in the chaos that has gripped Libya for years. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 87 points. The Nasdaq rose 156. More details at srnnews.com.
Have you ever walked in and looked at how beautiful a Lexington Discount Homes manufactured home really is? For more than 35 years, Lexington Discount Homes has helped families find home ownership with phenomenal customer service and a selection that fits your needs and your wallet. They have a huge variety of homes and prices. Come by and visit us at 1847 Augusta Highway or take a virtual tour online at lexingtondiscounthomes.com. That's lexingtondiscounthomes.com.
Hey, honey, I know you're taking some meds for cholesterol. I was reading that if you're on these medicines, you should also be taking some CoQ10.
Actually, our pharmacist mentioned that to me already. He called me the other day, and we went through each of our medications together.
Really? He called you?
Yeah, he asked if I was having any side effects, recommended supplements that could help me, and let me know the risk of mixing certain drugs.
Wow. I'm happy to know that True Pharmacy is thinking about us.
True Pharmacy, 1628 Charleston Highway, 3217 Divine Street, or visit truerxsc.com.
Hey, Kev here. One thing that's truly unique about The Point is you. We call our listeners the Point family. You've stayed so loyal. You've stayed so supportive. Thank you for that. We call The Point Columbia's local talk radio experience. We're community driven. We push hard for our advertising partners because they're mom and pop businesses, small business owners. People ask me all the time, how can we help you with The Point, Kev? Well, it's pretty simple. Support those who support us. If you hear an advertising partner here on The Point, use them. Support them. Brag to them that you're there because you trust The Point. If you're a local small business owner, I'd love to have you as part of our lineup. Give me a call. Tell me your story. I'll create a customized advertising package that fits your budget and your needs. Nothing corporate, nothing cookie cutter. Look, if you haven't tried radio, it does work, especially here at The Point. Give us an opportunity to share you with our Point family. Call me. 563-8558. That's 563-8558. Or email me directly, kev@makethepointradio.com. I sure hope we can partner up. Join The Point family.
Hey, it's Jay with the Cigar Militia, Columbia's premium cigar store. Have you noticed the change in weather? Some people call it fall. We call it cigar smoking season. Or better yet, it's football weather. Come in and check out our humidor and do what I do and get your go-to stick or try something new. We've got an awesome staff willing to walk you through and help you find your new favorite. And besides, you're going to need some celebration cigars for when your favorite team wins the big game. The Cigar Militia, 1410 Colonial Life Boulevard.
Ever wonder why more businesses don't provide the same excellent service as, say, Chick-fil-A? At Hometown 803, they do. They're your family-run, all things South Carolina store. Famous for their 803 area code hats with the crescent moon. They also have Carolina and Clemson-themed hats and their latest drop, PVC patch hats, which are just on fire. Their local high school partner hats are the hats that give back with each sale. Visit their store in downtown Lexington next to McDonald's or online at hometown803.com. Use code RADIO at checkout to get 15% off.
Okay, Zach Willis coming up in just a couple of moments. 1st and 10 with Coach Zach Willis right around the corner. But we got to go back and finish the recruiting report brought to you by Seawell. So, talking about this big offensive lineman, Daniel Akinkunmi, 6'5", 320 out of London. And again, feels like he knows enough about Clemson because he was there for camp and he's been in regular conversation with Thomas Austin. However, you do have to think with him not taking an official visit, that's not good for Clemson's chances. He's announcing October the 12th, and so that time it's a month away. But he said about Clemson, he talks to Austin every couple of days about football, about life. He says of Clemson, they love winning. They have an amazing culture. They love preparing their players for football and even life after football. It's really like a family and community atmosphere and environment. He officially visited Baylor in June and made an official visit to Oklahoma for their season opening game 2 weeks ago. He called that visit amazing, his first time at a college football game. And he said to see the game was amazing. The fan base was crazy. Everyone knew who he was and where he was from. So Oklahoma, obviously, having him in for a game and showing him everything from that standpoint has got to be a bonus for them. He's been working with the top 5 of Clemson, Oklahoma, Baylor, Miami, and Ole Miss. Other notes, 2025 tight end Ethan Barber of Alpharetta, Georgia, named the top 5 of USC, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Ohio State. He has a commitment date of September 22nd. He was at Alabama Saturday for the Texas game, might be at Georgia this Saturday for the USC game. 2026 running back Jalen McGill made an unofficial visit to Clemson Saturday. USC offered 2027 defensive end LaDamian Guyton, 6'3", 225 from Savannah. Somerville receiver Yannick Smith was offered by Kentucky. Running back Tate Titshaw, who drew some recruiting interest from USC, committed to Navy. USC target 2025 receiver Caleb Cunningham of Ackerman, Mississippi, plans to visit Georgia for Saturday's game. 2025 defensive tackle Elijah Griffin of Savannah, who was at USC this past Saturday, also plans to be in Athens. USC baseball commitment Micah Matthews, who's also being recruited as a wide receiver, he did make it in for Saturday's game with Furman at USC and continues to hold to his commitment for baseball for the Gamecocks, but wants to be recruited, wants to play football. Really, first and foremost now, he wants to play football. Basketball. Clemson target 6'4" Austin Swartz of Concord, North Carolina, committed to Miami last week. Clemson was one of his official visits this past summer. 2025 6'5" Miles Franklin, Potomac, Maryland, made an unofficial visit to USC Saturday. Radford. 2026 6'7" Trevin Raymond of South Point made an unofficial visit to USC on Saturday. USC target 6'5" Bishop Boswell of Charlotte made an official visit to Tennessee over the weekend. Unless Chris has something to add, you have anything in recruiting you want to add?
I do not have anything in recruiting tonight, but thank you for asking.
Well, I just didn't know if you saw some recruits down at the Coastal Carolina game you wanted to share with us.
I'm sure I bumped into a few of them. There are so many people on the sidelines of college football anymore, it's difficult to tell.
That's the amazing difference. Well, there's a lot of differences, but one of the big differences between NFL and college football is you look at the sidelines of an NFL game, a regular season game. I guess it changes in the playoffs, but regular season game, it's scarce.
Oh, yeah, no
First
doubt.
of all, they've only got, 54 players in uniform? 53 in a game, 53. You don't have all these hangers-on and onlookers and all that, and recruits and everything like that hanging around. It's a clean, bare sideline. The other amazing thing to me is how short halftime is in the NFL.
It's 13 minutes.
Yeah, it's too short.
No band.
That's true.
That's the reason.
But I mean,
you take out the marching bands in college football. Of course, we've gotten rid of every other tradition. Why not do that? But I'm not an advocate for it. I'm just saying, if you took that out, college half times wouldn't be very long either.
Well, I mean, I think they're 20 minutes. I think 20 minutes is a good number. Those guys need a chance to catch their breath.
Yeah.
But it was announced at halftime of the USC game that the USC band has been invited to and will participate in the Thanksgiving Macy's Day Parade.
Wow.
Good
in
for them.
New York City.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not, I have a band student, so my son's a band student. Colleges offer scholarships for band.
Oh, sure.
I mean, so it's a big deal. Mention this one thing real quick. Carolina Panthers, J.C. Horn went out injured at the end of the first half, didn't come back.
Yeah. I heard that.
Hamstring.
Speaking of the band, when I was in high school, part of what I did, of course, trying to have a well-rounded education. I was the fourth trombone in a 3-trombone band. In other words, I just carried the instrument. I was told back and forth. I was told not to make any sounds, just move the slide. The slide, is that what it's called? The slide?
Yep.
Yes. Just move
That's
it.
why you were the fourth trombone in a 3-trombone band.
Exactly. I was there to take up a spot to help spell out the word ladder. They needed somebody to complete the crossing of a T.
Did you dot the A?
No, we needed one more person to complete the crossing of a T. We have 2 T's.
With 1 T.
That's right. We were going to have to spell it with 1 T.
Later.
One more quick recruiting note, Phil. Florida had a decommitment today from Hampton, Georgia defensive lineman. I'm going to mispronounce this, but Makai Boro.
Yeah.
He decommitted, and just worth pointing out that the Gamecocks did appear to go after him pretty hard. He does have an offer from the Gamecocks, but again, being from Georgia, looks like he chose Florida over Georgia and Auburn.
Yeah, now they're saying he's headed to Georgia,
Got it.
Yeah. Are we set with Zach? We ready to rock and roll? It is time, ladies and gentlemen, on this Monday night for another thrilling edition. 1st and 10. And we don't need a measurement on this, and we don't need a replay. 1st and 10 with Coach Zach Willis. Coach, good evening. Welcome in. How are you, sir?
I guess I did all a few push-ups, Bill. I was a little bit late getting on. I was on the phone with Carolina trying to help them with their blocking scheme.
Is that what you were doing? Well, what'd you tell them?
Oh, that's a secret now. That's, what do you call it? I signed an NDA, so I can't say.
I got you. Well, in looking at them closely, did you see improvement on their offensive lines Saturday night?
Well, of course, they were playing my alma mater. They were blocking 1AA at line instead of North Carolina's crowd or Georgia or Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I was talking to Smitty earlier today, and the big thing about hey, everybody needs to be fired up. Everybody needs to be happy, but you can't tell a whole lot when you play those ball games unless you're really, really bad. And we know they're not really, really bad after the explosion they had in the second half. So, I think the line's going to be a question mark. How bad, I don't know yet. I can't tell, to be totally fair to everybody there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's start with Rattler since we're talking about the Gamecocks. Rattler, the passing game, Xavier Leggett, who is the new PD power man, of course, being from Mullins. Of course, when he was at Mullins, he was the all-everything player. He was that superior athlete at a small school who could do everything on the football field, and now he is showing it at South Carolina. What about his growth from last year to this year and how he's just sort of taken off?
It's amazing how confidence can change an athlete, and I think it's the greatest gift any coach can give, and I think the staff over there needs to take a bow for developing him. But mostly probably, with these small-town kids, I was one myself. Like you said, you were from Lattifield. Coming to the big city, sometimes guys take to it and boom, they blossom. Some guys take a little bit longer, but man, he was worth the wait. He's spectacular. I mean, even on special teams, this guy's just an animal. And a great mismatch, and a super athlete. I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. And, you mentioned Rattler. I mean, as close to perfect as you can get without being perfect, though. It shows you what he can do when he's got a clean pocket.
He had a clean pocket against Furman, and of course, he's going to really need one against Georgia. We'll talk about that coming up. And that might be too much to ask for, but let's just hold off on that for just a second. I do want to talk about some of his numbers because, as I mentioned earlier in the show, he is the nation's leader and the SEC leader in a number of different passing categories, are right up there at the very top. He is 55 of 66. That's 83.3%, 698 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's averaging 349 passing yards per game. Can he and the receivers, single-handedly wouldn't be the right term, but as a group, single-handedly, he and the receivers as a group, can they keep South Carolina in a game in Athens against this Georgia team?
It's possible. The biggest thing, we saw Will Muschamp, South Carolina team, go down with a lot less talent against a very good Georgia team and beat them down there. And so there's always that possibility in these games that you can win them, especially with an elite talent like Rattler at quarterback and then these receivers. And hopefully They get Wells back. He gets healthy. We know he's a great player. But I'm going to tell you, you have to go back. The kid from Mullins is a walking mismatch. And it kind of brings me back to Mike Williams and T. Higgins and those guys down at Clemson. You've always got the 50-50 ball that you can throw up if all else fails. It doesn't take you can 3-step drop and lay it up and let him try to go get it. They can become experts at that. But Rattler, if they decide to max protect, which means leaving the backs in, maybe bring a tight end in, leave him in, take 3 receivers into a route, when you've got the kind of talent they have, I'm not saying, you can walk in there and dominate. We know better than that. But you can be competitive. Now, if the offensive line can do anything to slow Georgia down, with a guy playing the level that Rattler's playing, and it's absolutely what I hope for when we talked about, hey, this guy's special. When he came on the market, I said, this is the guy they get to turn it around. I hate to pat myself on the back, but if you hear that pat on the back, that's me doing just that. But he was the key. He's the key, and he's proving it now. So if it's me, I start every offensive meeting with protection. How are we going to protect this play? How are we going to protect this pass? How are we going to block up this run so we have absolutely every chance for it to be successful? We don't need super electrifying plays. We need to move the football, keep it out of Georgia's hands, and we need to remember Georgia's got a new quarterback too. Tons of talent, but he's new. We need to stay in this thing until the fourth quarter. Not quarterback if he can have time to throw the ball.
Yeah, I think they win at that position. So you're Will Muschamp, okay, and you're sitting at your house at Lake Murray on your island that you still have with your $16 million from the Gamecocks and your $5 million house. And you're thinking about what you want to do with this Georgia defense. I mean, would you just rush your base against the Gamecocks, knowing their offensive line has been a sieve, and maybe rush 4 or 5 tops, and then you can afford to double team Leggett, and then you can play man elsewhere in the secondary? How would you do it if you're Will Muschamp and company?
It depends on how healthy Carolina is at the other receiver spots. If we get the kid back that was so good last year for him, it was their leading receiver, they become a different animal. You can bracket Leggett still, but you've got to back off some other people and give them some things. And South Carolina showed some kids. There were some other kids out there making a little bit of noise in both of these games. Not like Leggett, but Leggett may be the best receiver, at least pro prospect-wise, in the country. He reminds you of DK Metcalf. A very, very similar kind of back, or receiver, just dominant. I think if I'm Muschamp, I do what, Gene Chizik did. I try to get one-on-one matchups because I feel like I'm better up front physically. I don't have to give up. I can walk a linebacker up over an uncovered guard. That guard's got to handle me if I come. If I don't, the D-line's off the ball so quick, the tackle and the center manned up or singled up, depending on the alignment, and they've got to block a better athlete for 3.5 seconds to give Rattler a chance. And that's what North Carolina did very effectively. They rushed 5, maybe 6 at times, but most of the time they were walking up and backing out, but South Carolina had to respect the backer showing blitz, and it singled people up, and they had a hard time with it.
Turn our attention to Clemson. And, they kind of dilly-dallied there, not taking anything away from Charleston Southern, because Coach Gardenia is off to a really good start. He's impressed people with that season-opening win over North Greenville. North Greenville beat Newberry Saturday night, so they're pretty good. And then, they were poised to take a lead in the second quarter against Clemson. And, of course, the Tigers eventually caught them and pulled away. But they had some anxious moments there, some shaky moments in the first quarter, maybe a little bit into the second quarter. Some of the natives getting restless with their play at quarterback, but their wagon is tied to Cade Klubnik. I mean, that's your quarterback at Clemson. There's no question about it. Nobody else is even under consideration for stepping in. He's got to be the guy for them.
Well, Phil, I tell you, the thing that concerns me down there is just it does not seem like, and it's been a while since they had any kind of rhythm in that offense. I think when they played North Carolina in the ACC Championship Club, it came in and looked great. But That's the only time a quarterback's looked that good for them in a very long, in years. They've won games on running, defense, everything but quarterback play since Trevor Lawrence left. And it has just not been there for them. And I don't know what the question is. It looks to me like not a whole lot has changed with the play calling. I don't see Riley making a huge difference. He plays a lot more outside the hashes because that's what that offense does. He's kind of being forced, I think, to run the ball, and they need to run the ball because they've got 2 stud running backs at least and a pretty doggone good offensive line. Klubnik just needs to settle down, and I'm going to be honest, Charleston Southern beating North Greenville by only 3 when their FCS does not impress me at all. That's when I found out it was a 3-point game, I'm like, Clemson ought to put 100 on them by a third quarter. And they didn't do it. And I'm just being honest. I mean, I coached at Newberry and I coached in the Division I level, and we beat several 1AA teams, as you know, that were a lot better than that. And I don't discount, but you're talking about the Clemson Tigers. We're not really talking about Charles. I don't want to put them down.
Right.
I think they're very well coached, but man, this is Clemson we're talking about, and I think right now their quarterbacks are confused. I think they're trying too hard. I think that's the big thing. Their kids are high character kids. That's a high character program, and they need to take it easy on themselves if you want to boil it down. And their Klubnik's pressing. He's not used to losing. He's definitely not used to getting booed. I was really disappointed when I heard him booing, but that's the world we live in today. What have they lost? So they're like 140 something and 1 or something, some crazy stat at home when they've got a certain statistic, but I guess that's not good enough. So, it's just a matter of settling down. He's young, Phil, and I honestly don't know the answer.
Coach Zach Willis joining us here on First and 10. Coach, sticking with that Clemson game, I was up there covering it, and I don't have this stat in front of me for the Duke game. Maybe Phil can jump in, but an observation, Cade Klubnik did not take a single snap from under center. Every single snap the entire game was from the shotgun. I don't know if that's maybe just the evolution of football and that's the Garrett Riley offense, or if that's an issue. But we've seen several bad snaps, including in this game on that fourth down from their own 29-yard line early on in the game, where it turned into a fumble and a turnover there. Do you have any issue there with not ever lining up under center? Should people be concerned about that, or is that just kind of the way it is?
Well, I would say, not a personal issue, but philosophically, absolutely. You've got to be able to take the ball from under center. We ran the spread. I learned it from Urban Meyer and Rich Rodriguez, who were kind of the 2 of the really first ones. And the one thing that I noticed immediately was once you get in short yardage, red zone type situations, short yardage, we're just saying goal line situations, probably a better term. It's weak there. Unless you're just physically dominant, which when they had Christian Wilkins running over the top, I think they got under center most of the time then, but, they've gotten away from that. And, of course, Riley, if you watched Oklahoma and his brothers' teams, that was their weakness. Even when he had Joe Mixon, they couldn't, when they played the elite teams, they get stuffed. And Clemson, by hitching their wagon to this, now, of course, Dabo can walk in there and change some things if he wants to. Man, if you've got Shipley and Moffa back there, good Lord Almighty. And Klubnik's a really face. Saw him run the kid down on the interception. I mean, he tried. That kid should, or a fumble, I guess. That kid should have been gone, and he ran him down in the Duke game. Great speed, great straight line speed. So I'm not a fan of losing yardage to gain yardage. I want to attack the line of scrimmage, especially when I'm superior to about everybody I play up front and at the running back position with not one but 2 great backs. So, yeah, I always had, my regular package, but I had situational packages, and we don't see a lot of situational offense anymore. They just kind of go no huddle and hope you can't substitute. I got news for you. Gene Chiswick substituted the whole night. He knows it's no huddle. He understood what to do, and people don't watch that video of when it comes to them. They know what to do. In North Carolina, even though they have not played Clemson, they will show people how to defend the no huddle offense.
Coach,
they can substitute.
Coach, real quick, this is Ernest Robinson, and by the way, every time I hear you speak, I think about Clyde Parrish. But anyway, I want to ask you about Clemson's receivers. We talk about Klubnik, we talk about the backs. This group, is not a really high quality group of receivers. I mean, I know Klubnik, there's a lot he could probably do, but talk about this receiver group as a group. I mean, they're not elite receivers.
No, I mean, extremely astute observation, in my opinion, Ernest. And you also you also warmed my heart talking about Coach Parrish. He's the reason I got into coaching to start with. But anyway, they can't separate. They couldn't separate against Furman. And I love my old school. They're great, but we were never fast. That wasn't what we were known for in our best. And we're used to Mike Williams and T. Higgins and Ross and all these. Even Hunter Renfro around. He's a legit 4.5 kid. But these guys are not separating, and I don't know why. Other than the fact, like you said, they just don't have that burning blazing speed that we've seen in the past. It's not there.
All right. Well, we look ahead. South Carolina, Georgia, Gamecocks are getting 27. I've told everybody take the points. Of course, Clemson's 23 plus against FAU. Tom Herman got a bad football team coming into Death Valley, so Clemson's got a chance to work on a few more things. And then Florida State at noon. I hate the fact that game's at noon. That game should be a primetime game, no question about it. Traffic's going to be an absolute bear getting into Death Valley. So we will talk about that next week, and we'll review and see what the Gamecocks can do against these Bulldogs down in Athens. They're going to have to play way over their heads and have that kind of special day, and Georgia's going to have to help them a little bit, right, for the Gamecocks to be in this thing in the fourth quarter?
I think so, but one thing I do say is old Shane Boomer's shown us he can pull upsets. So they got a puncher's chance in this ball game. They got nothing to lose, guys. Let's go later years back and give it all they got.
There you go. Coach, thank you, sir. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, there you go. The coach, Zach Willis, 1st and 10 with Zach Willis here on Sports Talk every Monday night. Tomorrow is a Talking Tuesday. I'll be heading up to Clemson to listen to Dabo Swinney. Pat will be heading over to South Carolina to listen to the Gamecocks. We'll have that for you tomorrow night. And then Wednesday, of course, is Chalk Talk with Chuck Reedy and Ellis Johnson. They'll have a lot of dicey things to talk about as well, Chris. I can't believe that, Chuck Reedy, I'm going to throw it at him on about the Gamecocks. I mean,
he's not going to bite.
They got to forget the running game and throw it all over the park.
He'll look at you like you've grown two heads because that's just not how that's not in his DNA. You've got to be able to run the ball. He said this constantly. He's been spot on about Carolina. He said it before the season began. He didn't think they'd have much of a running game, and nothing that we've seen thus far this season has changed that. So, yeah, I'd be curious to see it. Well, we can throw it back at him. All right, let's take away your ground game. How would you attack Georgia? Or do you just not show up? I mean, those are your only two options because Georgia's going to take away what little bit of a running game that South Carolina has been able to muster thus far. So it's got to be on Rattler's shoulders. So if you're Chuck Reedy and you're running that offense, what do you do?
Georgia's got to respect South Carolina's ability to throw the football out.
I think so.
And South Carolina's got to go quick. They got to go quick. A lot of quick passes. Hope that you can get a guy in space, break a tackle. Brown and Leggett and Wells are hard to bring down one-on-one. Maybe you play the short pass game early and then you loosen them up. That might open up a little running lane for you here or there.
Those guys got to be healthy, too. They're going to need them all.
Absolutely.
On Saturday.
We'll talk more about it, of course, throughout the week. Ernest, great seeing you.
Good to see you guys as well.
We'll see you again maybe next time.
Next week.
Or a couple of weeks whenever you're back from a state ball game. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Bergie, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Pat, thank you very much. Great job as always. Thank you to everybody for being with us tonight. Talking Tuesday coming your way tomorrow night right here on Sports Talk. We'll see you then. Have a great night.